Pines, wonderful show from start to finish. I was hooked on the mystery right away, and I love the way it evolved throughout the show. Now, it's been a few years since you've led a live action series. What about this material really sparked your interest to want to return to that field?
Well, it's really superior material. I mean, I have to be honest, full disclosure, I hadn't read any of Louise Penny's novels before I got involved with this, and I kind of got involved with it almost indirectly. I was doing another production, and I was talking to the producer of that movie, and I happened to say, "Oh, I've just received this inquiry about this series based on a series of books by Louise Penny." And the producer who I was speaking to suddenly went, "Oh my gosh, she's great, like biggest fan, raving about the books, had read them all." And said, well, what part are you up for? And I said, well, I think it's Armand Gamache. And she literally grabbed me by the shoulders and just got right in my face and said, you must do it. You must do it. I mean, she was really kind of quite, really adamant about it. And this is a person whose taste and opinion I respect, So I said, well, I better go and check this out. So I found, and she's also told me that the books are written in an order. There's an order to the books, because each book sort of leaves a few strands hanging that you kind of pick up on the next book, so it kind of builds momentum as the books go on. So I read the first three, I think, and I got really hooked on it. And then by the time I got to the end of the first two books, the first scripts started to arrive, and I realized that the scripts themselves really caught the spirit and tone of the books, which is really, they didn't just kind of grab the title and then throw the rest away. They really were very, very respectful in the way they kind of adapted the books. And the character's extraordinary. He's a very, very fascinating man. And as an actor, you look for things that you can play. It's a writer can create a whole fascinating backstory for a character, but if it's not there to play, it becomes rather, a pointless exercise. Whereas here you had a man who's kind of, as my granddaughter put it, whose superpower is empathy, which is quite an unusual thing for particularly a male detective. We're sort of used to detectives who are rather tortured and haunted, and they kind of drag all this with them. Whereas we've got a character here who's really whose driving force is an attempt to understand rather than condemn anyone, and also he also understands and is smart enough to know that all of us are capable of terrible things if pushed far enough. If the circumstances are right and the moment is such that and he understands this vulnerability of all of us and this capacity we all have, and I think it makes for a unique character in this particular genre.
I love the way your granddaughter puts that, because one of the things that was in my mind throughout the run was I love his compassion, his ability to really.
She actually said it in a way to kind of shut me up, because I was kind of waxing lyrical about the character. She went, "Oh, well, just cut to the chase, Granddad. What's his superpower?" That was basically what she said, and I kind of said, "Well, I think it's empathy, and okay, got it." Then of course we moved on.
Some younger viewers, they just want it right away, but this is a show.
A soundbite.
But this is a great show too, in that it does actually reward viewers who stick with it from start to finish. And I love the slow burn, and I'm curious what that was like for you. You said you loved that as the novels, but what was it like for you seeing this mystery, interconnected mystery, especially slowly unfurl with each script?
Well, it's a wonderful way to work, because it means you've got, as a performer, you've got time to really explore detail. You can really and invest some time in those character details that are going to sustain the character right through. It can be little things like the way they order food, or the way they sit, the way they hold themselves, and you've got and the books are so full of that kind of very rich personal detail, not just for Gamache but for all the characters. So there's a lot to work on, a lot to discover, a lot to build on, and hopefully as we go from season to season, with any luck, that we'll be able to kind of explore that more and more.
So with that said, then what would you say was one of your favorite details to find and to build on for Armand throughout the show?
Well, I think it was in the books. Louise talks a lot about how when he's listening, he kind of like looks at people very, very kind of. She talks about in the way the way he looks at people is rather kind of piercing, like he, you know. And she talks about, you know, his brown eyes. And I've got brown eyes, and I suppose I kind of went, oh yeah, I know what that means. And it's just a way of he looks and he listens, and it's that kind of stillness that kind of provokes and encourages people to talk, you know, whether they're a victim or a suspect. And I think that is an interesting quality in a character that you can convey, because also working on, you know, on a screen, you know, our TVs are bigger now, generally speaking. So you know, watching TV at home is becoming almost more and more of a cinematic experience. So the idea of kind of a stillness and holding people in that way is kind of it's fun to play.
Now, as much as I love that the show is a whodunit thriller, I also love the very timely themes in regards to Native and Indigenous peoples. And I'm wondering what that was like for you, exploring those themes, especially with, you know, cast members who are of that descent.
Well, it was for those of us, you know, who are not in the Indigenous community, it was a real opportunity to learn, you know, to learn and listen and try and get a grip on this, you know, unbelievably difficult and painful situation for so many people. And we had Indigenous consultants on the set. We had one of our directors, Tracy Deer, herself is an Indigenous person. She's a Mohawk, I believe. We had actors who are also Indigenous. And so we really just kind of, in a sense, just try to open our ears and listen and try and learn as much as possible.
What was one of the biggest things that you learned and wanted to then bring into the production and your character?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned certainly is that it's, you know, it's a mistake to think of the Indigenous community in any country, but particularly here, as some kind of monolithic block of people that all think the same and behave. You know, and the truth is these communities are made up of individuals with all kinds of achievements, all kinds of problems, all kinds of anxieties and aspirations. You know, and I think it was important, and I think the scripts have done this, that rather than focus on the tragedy, which is there and has to be dealt with, of course, but also focus on the resilience of this community and the joy that, you know, this community is full of joy. You know, it's not a you know, the Indigenous people that I met were all full of grace and generosity and fun. You know, they were incredibly welcoming to us. You know, we actually worked on land that was, you know, theirs essentially, and they were incredibly generous and very welcoming, and that was hugely important for us. You know, because we wanted to reflect those stories in an appropriate, respectful, and you know, correct way.
Well, I certainly feel like you have. I feel like it's a wonderful thing to get to see brought to life and to explored in a very authentic manner. And I love also the dynamic between all of the cast in this show. The characters all play off of each other so well. What was that like for you developing, you know, your very individual rapports with each actor throughout the show?
Well, you know, it was very easy. You know, I'm not quite sure how we did it. I think it's always a mixture of good luck and you know, just trying to be as kind of collaborative as you can. You know, luckily we all came to this project with very similar ideas. We come from very similar sort of backgrounds. You know, a lot of most of the actors have done a lot of theater. You know, a lot of film. You know, we came with, I think, shared standards, if you like, and the fact that it's an ensemble company. You know, it's not kind of like, oh, well, you know, Fred Molina and everybody else. You know, it's a very much an ensemble, and we were graced with a fantastic crew. So I think we really had the opportunity to create a family of sorts, and we embraced it. You know, grabbed onto that idea with both hands, and we had a wonderful time. And I think there's you know, it's a mixture of mutual respect and also a sense of fun as well. Because, you know, we're all incredibly lucky when you think about it. We're incredibly lucky to be able to make a living in this way. You know, it can't be stressed enough. You know, we're extraordinarily privileged, and so it's, you know, it's an honor, really.
Well, I'm glad that you got to have that with them because, like I say, it plays off so well throughout the season. And I love the small town setting. Any kind of show that has a small town setting like this, whether it be Twin Peaks or anything like that, always just has such a rich nature to it. And I'm curious if there was any one location in the show, be it a set or actual location, that you loved getting to work on the most.
Well, the great, I mean, the area, we shot in various places, but the small town where we shot, where we kind of set Three Pines, you know, with the bookshop and the bistro and the community center and all of that, that was a wonderful place to shoot, and it was, we were there we enjoyed the summer, the fall, and the beginning of winter there, and so we saw it in all its glory. And I think I was very pleased to see all those drone shots. You know, we use the drone camera quite a lot to create, you know, to give a sense of that space and a sense of the place itself, you know, how fantastic it looks, you know. Although, as you know, I'm sure, you know, working with a drone, you can't really do any dialogue, you know, because drones are incredibly noisy. But in order to create atmosphere and a sense of place, you know, it was wonderful. We had a great time doing all of that.
Yeah, drones, they're not the quietest tool to utilize, but like you say, as far to set up a location and its atmosphere, they can be one of the greatest assets. And I'm glad that, like you say, they utilized it for the show. And I can't get into spoilers, unfortunately, but the show ends on a really interesting note to potentially go into a season 2. And you know, you mentioned earlier, fingers crossed. But have you heard any positive talks for that?
Nothing yet, but we're very hopeful, and certainly our bosses have indicated that they're very happy with what we've done. You know, Amazon are clearly very supportive of the project. You know, they're putting a lot of effort and a lot of money into getting the word out there. So I can only assume that they're as you know, as gung ho as we are.